is very uncanny meeting someone who's, like, had so many of the similar, like, experiences as me.
And I feel like we have like a brotherhood, if you say.
Yes.
Hey everyone, welcome to Okaidi Voices. We're so excited that you're here. This episode centers around trans voices, honoring the diversity and resilience of trans Nikkei experiences.
Hi, my name is Xander. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a Japanese American trans man, also queer, and fourth generation, so Yonsei.
My name is Kai. I go by he, him. I am a trans man. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Chicago, outside of a little bit outside in the suburbs, and it was mostly white predominant. So I actually didn't really had the feeling of being Asian, uh, especially being with white, Hispanic. So I couldn't really have that connection. What was your experience?
I also grew up in a mostly white town. I grew up in Oregon, small town Oregon, and so I it was such a white town that people would assume that just because I didn't look white that I didn't speak English, which sometimes was fun when there were like people handing out like pamphlets and things and I could just walk right by them as long as I didn't say anything. 'Cause they would
Yeah.
just assume that they wouldn't be able to communicate with me. But other times was really hard for me. It took so long for me to be able to see anyone that I could even relate to even just pieces of myself. Early on, there were times when I saw things and I liked them, but I didn't know why. Like, I was always really drawn to Mulan. The song Reflection was really huge for me. Had no idea why that meant a lot to me. Had no idea why I liked it so much. But I did really love it. And now that I get to look back, I can see it's like, oh, it's because I also felt like who other people saw me as didn't match up with how I felt inside.
Yeah. No, I definitely have that same feeling for reflection, especially when she cut off her. Yeah, so I totally get that.
How did you make that jump from, kind of seeing these sparks of in these little shards of like who you are outside into making the connection to this is who I am inside? How did you kind of put those pieces together?
I didn't actually put those pieces together for myself. I think I got that direction from my ex partner because she's the one who saw me mostly having these internal issues of having like body dysphoria and not really like why am I so frustrated, without really realizing what the key deeper reason is. But growing up, I mean, I would I when I was 10, I kind of just went into like the kitchen area and I just like shouted out. I was like, I have an announcement, and I just said I want a sex change, and I didn't even know what that meant. I think that was just like a soul calling of like that's what I wanted, but I never like followed up on that because I think for me, especially where I grew up in, no one was coming out. I just think that no one really wanted to come out, and now so many people felt open to come out. But I think it also kind of helped that I moved to California. Specifically, Southern California is very open and has a bigger community.
The hardest part about, finding the community, finding representation locally, was that I wasn't just growing up in this more rural area, but I was also growing up really religious. And it was very conservatively Christian religious, so a very like evangelical Baptist kind of growing up.
Okay.
And so I had no idea what being trans was, and then, or really being what being gay was. And my context for when I did figure out what it was that it was incredibly sinful and not just like normal sin, like lying or something like that, but like a really terrible, like blasphemous kind of sin that like couldn't be forgiven because you weren't just doing something that God didn't want you to do. You were basically saying that you knew better than God, right? You knew better than what His plan was for you,
Hmm.
and so it was something that I steered very, very clear of, because I was afraid of it, right? I thought it was really dangerous, and so it took a long time for me to get distance from the church and realize that that didn't line up with what I believed at all.
Mm.
That what's most important to me isn't following rules, it's loving and accepting everyone, including me, which is, I think, the part that took the longest for me to figure out.
So what age did you know, um, you know, there might be a chance of it? You had these feelings. Did you have it at an early age? And then because of going to church, just like you said, like you kind of suppressed it?
You are right on about the suppression part, and I suppressed it so much that I wasn't even conscious of it for quite a while. So I didn't realize that I was having these very queer, very trans feelings until I was like definitely mid 20s. And so before then, I would have these feelings, but I wouldn't know what they were, where they came from, which was really confusing. I had felt for so long like my parents, who, because I have two older sisters, I felt like they were supposed to have a son. And I was so convinced of this that like there had been some sort of mistake and like they ended up with me instead of a son. That I finally worked up the courage to go to them. And I was like, did you ever, wish that I had been born a boy? And they were like, oh, no, 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 of course not. Like, we're so happy, like, to have you as our daughter. And and I felt so disappointed in that moment. And they were so confused by my reaction because they were like, you should be relieved that, like, we're happy that, like, we have you just the way you are. And then I was like, but, like, don't you wish I was your son? Because internally, I wished I was their son. It took so long for me to be able to put the pieces together of, oh, like, I'm not comfortable with the way my voice sounds. I'm not, comfortable, with the way my chest looks. I always felt like I should have been, the son in the family.
Hmm.
I wanted to hang out with the boys in class, but they
Yeah.
didn't want to hang out with me. And that was also really confusing. And so it took me till I was much, much older, and until I could put all of those little things together. When you did put those pieces together of like, okay, this might be who I am, how did you go about sharing that with other people?
Yeah. So, 2014, I went to Peru, and being alone, hiking like a 3 to 4 day, out in the wilderness. I was just basically alone with my thoughts. So, hiking up those mountains, I did a lot of like self reflection. And at the time, I was really trying to understand my sexual identity. And I knew that I was attracted to women. So, when I came back from that trip, I decided to start dating women and being open to that. And um, when I first met my ex, my first ex, we started dating, and I eventually brought her to one of my family events, and I just introduced her as my girlfriend. And my family was very supportive about it. They didn't really make a big deal out of it, so that was kind of like my coming out as a lesbian at that time. And then later on in 2017, I just told my dad separately, and I was like, I'm trans, and I think this is like the right stepping for me, and this makes sense to me. And I think that really helps me, with that conversation, because he did make it a big deal. Because he's like, you know, are you going to therapy? Are you sure this is the right decision that you want to make? And I think that like really helped me, because I'm like, yes, I'm 100% sure about this. So, even though it wasn't like a big, like, whoa, yay, it was, okay, cool. So go, next steps. What are your next steps? Let's do it. But my dad has been my number one supporter. He is a feminist. I love it. So he's telling me all about the politics and stuff. So I think that's really nice. But he's always in my corner, and I know, he's there for me. So I think that has really pushed me to continue on my transition. You know, what about you?
I had a similar moment. So, as I started realizing like, oh, like there is something different about me, and then realizing like, oh, there's something different too about the queer community,
Mhm.
and finding that like I really identified with that. That was the first thing that I explored was my queerness, and what I thought that I the only thing that I could had access to, because I thought that I was a woman, so I thought that queerness for me meant that I had to be lesbian. But the word lesbian never felt right to me, um, and it was to the point where when I was finally ready to come out to family, that I used the words "I'm gay" instead of saying "I'm lesbian," and so I had no way of knowing all the foreshadowing that that would end up being, um, because I am a man and I'm mostly attracted to men. So saying that I'm gay ended up being way more accurate than I ever could have realized. It took me so long to feel comfortable sharing that with anyone.
Mhm.
But similarly, when I did figure that out and I did start telling my mom and my older sister, it was the similar kind of that kind of that little bit quieter but still very strong support.
Mhm.
That's a little bit more subtle, where people like family are there for you. Um, in that like I'm always here whenever you need me kind of way that I feel like is very like prevalent in the Japanese American community.
Yeah, like, "Oh, I'm here, but,
Yeah, I'm
that's
not
it.
going to push
I'm not gonna
you.
push you.
Yeah,
I'm just here."
yeah.
Which, I think it's obviously nice to have, and I really am grateful to even have some type of, even if it's like a passive kind of support. I mean, sometimes I'm like, "Oh, it would be nice to have like, oh my god, congratulations," or like, you know, um, "Oh, I would like to know more about it."
I had a similar experience of like,
Or
oh
similar, or like, comment.
yeah, yeah, of like being grateful for the support, but then also being worried that like they say that they're proud, but how do I know that they actually are proud and like fully accept me if they're not demonstrating it in a more easy to see way? Um, and I found that that's slowly grown. That as I've transitioned, they've in some ways transitioned too with me. If that makes
Mhm.
sense, that the relationship has like grown and evolved. And as I've gotten more comfortable being myself, they've gotten more comfortable accepting me as I am. Now to the point that, I am starting to invite them to some like very trans events. Like so recently for Trans Day of Visibility, I got to do something really cool. I got to read a poem that I wrote. And it's a poem that I wrote at the beginning of the year, about what it felt like being trans right now, in this climate where everyone wants me to be anything but trans. And I got the opportunity to read it at this trans art event. And the coolest part for me, more than writing the poem, more than reading it out loud, was inviting my family and having my mom and my older sisters come, to support me. And I didn't think my dad would be interested because, events with a lot of people, loud noises aren't good for him. And so at no point, I didn't think that this would be his thing. But he found out that I was doing it, and he asked to read the poem, and I was like a little confused because like you're usually not interested in queer things. I was like, what kind of poetry do you think I'm writing? Like, do you think I'm writing about like the forest and the trees, or like what do you think this is? But I like gave him the printed copy I had of it, um, and it ended up like helping him take the leap from being supportive family to actually being an ally, because after I wrote that poem, he was like, it was really powerful, and what could I do to help? He ended up making a Facebook post, about how like he had a recent family picture, and he was like, "This is my family, and this is my son who happens to be trans, and I fully accept him," um, which is a huge step for a very conservative, father to take, who has a lot of really conservative, very Christian friends on Facebook, and so I know that for him was a big step. But I think it was really brave, and it has just been this cool way of, as I've become more comfortable with myself, getting to have these more meaningful relationships with the people I love because they're able to see me and accept me as I am.
Did you have support, like, or are you having support while you transition?
Yeah, so the funny part is that I started to transition before I came out to like hardly anybody. So like my therapist knew, and then the my like this nurse midwife I was seeing to for hormone therapy, she knew obviously so that I could get care from her, but beyond those people, like hardly anyone knew.
Mhm.
I started transitioning very much so in secret.
Okay.
And so at the very beginning, I really didn't have a lot of support in the transition. And that was mostly because I was afraid that people wouldn't be on board, right?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to share this with people until like I get to a more steady, more stable place personally. Um, where I built up more support. And so, if I lose some people in my life, like I could have other people to rely on.
Mhm.
And so it was a very slow process of as I started medically transitioning, which for me was very much like HRT. Um, and getting more comfortable with myself, then I could start meeting more people and building more relationships and then building that support. But it was a very slow process that took a long time because I was so nervous and so anxious until a big stepping stone was finding Okaidi because now I
Mm.
had these like two levels of connection of not just the queer and the trans connection, but also the Japanese American part.
Do you know any trans people that you talk to about it?
Yeah, I've had a couple online friends like on Discord that I found that are also trans, and we would connect over the fact that like, oh, we like started HRT around the same time, and so it was kind of cool to compare changes, especially because they were on like transdermal, they were on gel, and I was on injection, so we could kind of compare how that was going,
Oh wow,
which
yeah.
was interesting. Um, but it's been harder to find. Friends like in real life and not online for sure. And especially friends that can relate to being a trans man of color because it's a little bit different, right, than being a white trans man, and that we don't quite get as much of the male privilege as sometimes a white trans man might get.
Mhm.
Not always, but it's certainly a different thing because there's different expectations. Right now, the thing that I'm really struggling with is getting my birth certificate changed, which is really important to me because I want to be able to travel out of state eventually. And so in order for me to have like well, especially to go internationally and get a passport, I need everything to line up, right? Have all the
Yes.
sex and name things line up. I don't have a passport, and I don't have a birth certificate that matches all my other legal documents. And so for me to apply for a passport would mean likely having to sacrifice like either my name or gender marker, not reflecting who I am. And so that's something it's a really hard waiting game for me as I've like submitted all my paperwork to have my birth certificate changed of like, is this actually going to go through? And then if this goes through, will they accept this paperwork? And will I be able to exist legally as myself, or like will the government make me pretend to be someone else? And so I'm right now working to well, I've submitted all my paperwork to get my birth certificate changed. Um, and so I submitted that like end of December, early January, and I'm still waiting for it to be processed.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so like the every day that goes by and it not being back, which they gave me an estimate of 4 months, so it should be ready soon. Every day that goes by, it's like, is this actually going to happen, or is the law going to change and this not be able to happen for me?
I actually just did my birth certificate. So I think I got scared, so I just submitted it quickly, and luckily, being in Illinois, it is I think it's easier than some other states. So I was able to finish that. So I actually just finished my last piece of document. How did your work take that?
It's a great question. So, what it's like for me specifically being a veterinarian, what this kind of a name and sex change would look like, and there was a worry of what are my clients going to think, these pet owners that I I take care of them and their pets. What are they going to think, the ones that I've established relationships with, when for one annual exam I have one name and I look and sound one way, and then they see me the next year for the next annual exam.
Mhm.
Um, and so that for me was a lot of stress. So it took quite a bit of time, quite a bit of relying on other people for emotional support and getting advice where I could from other people. I was trying to find anyone who had gone through something similar. So someone who is established in their career, in a job where reputation is really important, right? Where your name, your face are really important, because it's a profession where you need to be trusted, highly regarded, um, and how they navigated being known by this one name to clients, and to the public, and then having to ask people to call them and see them a different way. And I was having a really hard time finding any veterinarians who had been through something similar who could kind of tell me about how they navigated that and how it went and how it felt, and how they coped with things that were difficult about it. But around that time, Okadi was posting the Voices interviews, with the elders from our community, and I came across Mia Yamamoto's interview. I didn't think that we would be able to relate to very much, but when she started talking about coming out while she was practicing law, I realized that, like, oh, like, this is a little bit similar to me. Granted, she was much more established in her law career than I was in my medical career. I was, fairly new into it. Um, but she had also been in this place of, she had these established relationships in her case with like judges and other attorneys, in my case with coworkers and clients, and having to show up, publicly, and put yourself in that very vulnerable position of I'm this is who I am. And I remember her talking about how she was, even surprised at how welcoming and accepting everyone was, and how much that meant to her, and that gave me a lot of courage to go about telling, everyone at my own job. And then because of work, it ended up being where I had to transition, kind of do a lot of things all at once. So it was like, I need to get my name changed. And once my name's changed, I have to change it on my professional license. So then everyone at work has to know, because
Yes.
I need to be able to have medical records and my signature on prescriptions all
Oh,
looking a
yeah.
certain way. So
So you really had to like, you know,
when
expedite it.
yeah, there was no soft launch. It had to just be, yeah, it had to be full speed go. And so I was really fortunate that, especially my medical director at the hospital I was working at, was super supportive. And she, would find little areas where my name hadn't been changed, and she would take the initiative and getting them changed. She'd be like, "Hey, like, is this okay? Like, I noticed this thing is needs to be updated. Can I change this for you?" And I was like, "Yes, thank you so much. Like, I don't even have to bother you about
Aw.
it. Like, you're just right on it." And she was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I, saw that it wasn't, so I started looking into how to change it, and like corporate was giving me the workaround, but like she's like, I think I got it figured out." And so that was a
Yeah,
huge help for me.
that's awesome. I mean, it's just like the little things really shows, that as a medical director, she obviously cares about her employees, but it's obviously very important to you to have this change and, you know, just for them to do that. It may seem like a small step, but it's like really impactful for us, So I think that's awesome that you had like a great experience. But I actually had an opposite reaction. When I started transitioning changing my name, my gender, I had to go through HR to do all that. And my direct manager, though, he was using like she, her pronouns a lot. behind my back, not to my face directly. So that's like an issue that I had. And I think it's more upsetting to me that the people that knew that was wrong didn't really speak up for me. I was having a lot of anxiety from knowing I couldn't get away from this direct manager. I did all like ways of like transferring to a different team, transferring to a different manager. So my store manager denied all that. So pretty much rejected all those things. So I I couldn't handle it anymore. Being even though we're remote, I'm not really in his face, but knowing that he's purposely saying these unnecessary comments about me, even though I'm like, it has nothing to do about the work that I did at the job. Um, I just had to quit. So I quit. I called my dad and I was obviously upset about it. And he's like, this job isn't going to be forever. This moment isn't going to be forever. You're going to come out the other side and um you're not even going to remember this in like 10 years. Even though it was like a very intense moment for me, but he's right. Like even just speaking about it, I kind of like forgot about that moment and being in that moment. And it's really sad because they are so like DEI, we're so inclusive, they should throw all this stuff, but internally they weren't doing that. So I think that's like if you're really fake two-faced about it and fake about it, then you shouldn't really continue having managers or leaders be in those roles if they can't accept all inclusivity and diversity. So and you know, I am very fortunate in a way that that was my only transphobic experience, but it was really hard to start testosterone and name change and then be in a relationship and then going to school. So I think that was just really tough for me that I was going through the worst changes of hormonal changes and I actually wanted to like not continue anymore during my first year. So I think that was like the toughest year that I had.
That would be incredibly tough. That's so incredible that you found a way forward with all of that.
Yeah.
What what gave you the strength to keep going, like with all that change happening and not having everyone around you, like your boss, being on board?
I definitely think my dad is my number one supporter. He supported me throughout. I mean, he never even questioned anything. He was more like, is this what you want? Are you happy with, who you are? Okay, what are the next steps? Basically, he wasn't like looking in the past or anything. And my dad never, questioned that. So I think, I'm very fortunate to have like a parent who is caring in that way.
What were those little like glimmers of like light that you saw? Like those little changes or those little like moments of joy that you found that like helped get you through that time? Like when you first started to see like, oh, like
Mm.
this might be like good or this might work out.
I mean, I think definitely like, every time is as cheesy as it is, it's like, when you're trans, you want to hear like your voice change. So I'm like, I hear my previous voice and people are like, that doesn't even sound like you. Like, so it's just like
Yeah.
weird. Like, this is my voice one day on T, you know? But I think like that, like made me happy just seeing that transition in my voice. And then, um, also like having top surgery was a major thing for me. And just like knowing like I don't have weight on my chest, literally. So I think that was like really amazing and uh yeah, so I just like knew I was like, okay, I'm on the right path. I know deep down it's hard, but I know this is exactly where I want to be. And I think that, that really was like just got pushed through it.
I had a similar feeling after top surgery. Like I thought it would be like this big, like exciting, like joyful, like super happy feeling, but like actually the first thing I felt when I woke up was just relief. It was like this was how it was always supposed to be. Like it was just a very peaceful feeling, which took me by surprise. But that's I think been overall what I've felt. The changes that I've noticed since starting to transition is like, oh, like I'm finally like feeling closer to my body, like I'm coming home to
Mm,
myself.
yeah, I feel that. Like you feel like one,
Yeah.
not like, oh, I'm gonna have this persona
Mhm.
and now I can finally just be me. How was your top surgery experience of, you know, appointments and then getting through it, anticipation?
That was the thing that I knew even before I knew I was trans. I knew that I wanted like a flatter chest, and
Okay,
it
yeah.
always bothered me that when I would try to like go running, like I'd get like back pain. And I also just hated the sensation when running of like feeling my chest move like up and
It's
down. Like
weird. It was
I,
weird.
it felt so wrong that I just could not like go running and enjoy it at all.
Yeah.
Um, and so I always kinda told myself, like, if I had a flatter chest, like, I would run.
Oh yeah, you're like, once I get my flatter chest, I will run. And then I was like, yes.
And that was exactly it, was then once I realized I was trans, I was like, "Oh, like, when I have top surgery, I will go running," which actually turned into was really cool, like, top surgery ended up being my motivation to start running because I was like, I wanna, like, be just for me, I wanted to, like, improve, like, my physical fitness before surgery, and so that was part of it.
Mhm.
Um, but kind of the overall process was, insurance companies try to make sure that you actually want this surgery that you're requesting and that you're actually a good candidate for it, like mentally and emotionally, is they want letters of support from two medical providers. So they want, usually it's like a therapist or a counselor or social worker. And then also, usually it's a primary care provider. And so they want the professional opinions of those people to be that you are ready for this mentally, emotionally, and then physically. This is something that you've wanted for not just now, but for a while.
Mhm.
Um, and then once you've, had that conversation with them, establish that care with them, then they can write you the letter of support. And then you get to have those letters submitted to the surgery office. And um, if it all looks good, then it goes to insurance. And then if they approve it, then you finally get to have surgery. And then you try to get on the waiting list for a surgeon,
Yeah.
which I got incredibly lucky because I was feeling so, I don't even know if miserable is the right word, but I was just feeling so disconnected and
Mhm.
just couldn't, I don't know,
There's
just
no word to really
yeah,
describe it, really.
there really isn't.
But you're just like, get it off my body.
Yeah, it was like almost a kind of disgust with myself, but that's not quite the right word, but
In
just a
terms, yeah.
yeah, just like of not feeling comfortable. Like and then for me the biggest factor that really made my decision for like which surgeon to go to very easy was I wanted to go with a surgeon that was local because I wanted my follow-up and I wanted like the surgery, I wanted it all to be close by and not have to like drive 2 hours because I wanted it to very much be something my family could be involved with. I knew that my mom would be super worried about me having a major surgery, even if she maybe wouldn't, she never voiced it out loud, but I knew that that's how she would be feeling.
Okay.
And so I wanted to help with her anxiety, have her be as involved as possible. And so having it be in town meant that she could take me to like she could go to the consultations with me. She
Mhm.
could, take me to surgery. She could pick me up afterward. Um, she could go to like some of the early post-op appointments with me. And so that to me was the deciding factor was I wanted it to be close to home so that my family could be more involved.
So when you told your parents that you wanted top surgery, how did they feel?
It's a great question. So for me, I wanted to establish early on that like my medical transition, like this is a boundary for me. Like I am going to make I'm going to make the decisions myself. And then I'll invite you to be a part of it if you want to be. But
Giving
like,
that open
yeah.
invitation
So like,
stuff.
exactly. It was very much an invitation. So it's like, I'm not asking for your permission in this. Like, I'm already starting this. It's if you want to join me in this, I would love that support. But if
Mm,
you don't, like,
that's okay.
I will keep doing it. And so that was very much how I did T, it was like I started T and then told them afterwards that I was trans. It was like I started getting the surgery stuff in order, got the letters, got on the list, and then it was like, "I have this consultation. Do you want to go with me?"
And so when you asked, was your mom like, yes? Like, her, how was her answer on that?
She definitely was a yes. I think the anxiety about the surgery that I saw coming was already starting because she was like, "Are you excited about this? Like, this is something you wanna do, right?" And I was like, "Yes." Like, you don't know all the steps I've been going through before this to make it and how long I've been waiting and how long I wanted this.
Mhm.
Um, but looking back, I know it's just that she was worried about because it is a big surgery. When you went through that, was it similar for you?
Well, I guess to start off with is for top surgery, I just knew that that was already going to happen. And I guess in the timeline of things is that I started testosterone and my name change process um, in like November, October, November of 2017. And then 2018 of March, I got my top surgery. So I think that was like pretty early on. I am I think I was scared of which doctors to choose. So I think like a really big thing that I checked was Reddit
Mm,
for uh for specifically trans men doctors. You see like the most common doctors that most trans men have gone through. So Dr. Mosser in San Francisco was like a
yep.
big name. Yep. So, okay. So you already know. So I went to him and it was a really easy consultation. The staff was amazing. So it was just straightforward with that. But I think after that, especially with insurance and stuff, like you don't really understand the process of how medical insurance like the payments and
Yeah.
what is left over. Like no one really explains. I mean, this could be outside of gender affirming surgeries, but no one really explains that to you. So really, just to understand everything about it was tough, exhausting, and I think I didn't at the time. I didn't want to get bottom surgery because of it, but then later on in my transition, once I was recovered from top surgery, I was like, okay, let's circle back with this idea, I guess, because I just knew I wouldn't feel complete. But that's my own personal journey. Not everyone wants to have that because it is very taxing on your body. And it's honestly terrifying because it's you have to do it in so many steps that people don't understand. And I did a lot of research on balloplasty, which is the bottom surgery, and I I even know there were so many people that had um, issues with their bottom surgery. Everyone heals differently though. So regardless of all that, and then finding the right doctor, and I looked at his final results and how realistic it was. In my head, I was like, if it looks realistic, then I know for sure I'm gonna go for it. So I think that's what like sold me is that, and I think also I I really just am like, we only have one life to live. And if I didn't do this, I know I would regret it, even if I tried. So even if like, because obviously anything could happen during the surgery, and let's just say I had complications and stuff like that, I wouldn't have known, and then I would just go through it. But I think I would rather have those complications than not trying at all. And I think that was a really big step for me to take that in account. And um, I guess another hard thing was doing a hysterectomy because it's a very invasive. It was more invasive than bottom surgery or top surgery just because relatable to a female body. And um, even though I knew this was what I wanted and to go to the next step of having bottom surgery, I had to get a full on hysterectomy, and knowing to not have kids, I knew that this was more important to me. It's more important to who I am.
I had similar feelings with my voice change. Like I knew that I wanted a lower speaking voice, but I actually kind of liked having a higher singing voice because I really liked being able to sing in school choir and then later in church choir and being able to have those soprano parts. Um, and so it took me a while to realize that like I could I can like miss some things about like before transition life while also be happy that I took those steps.
Mhm.
And so, like, the way that I started framing it is like, I see that time before medical transition as like kindergarten or like first grade. Like, were there
Yes.
great things about kindergarten? Like, yes, like recess, art time, like
Yeah.
all these opportunities to make friends. But then am I ultimately glad that I'm not in kindergarten anymore? Absolutely. Like
Mhm.
there's so much more now to do and discover. And so I feel the same way about my voice. Like, do I miss getting those high notes, like those big drama moments in singing? Yes, but am I ultimately like more glad that like when I do have to hear my voice recorded, like I'm actually fine hearing it and I'm not like feeling awful when I hear it?
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I am very conscious of like how I sound, and um just I'm always worried if I'm passing again, that type of feeling. So going out and meeting, like going to the store, let's say, or just speaking to any stranger, I tend to force my voice to go lower just to make sure I'm a male to them. They think I'm a male. But really, that actually hurt my voice a lot, and it was very hard. Even going to, like, bars, I can't project my voice, and it's very hard because it actually ruins my vocal cords, so that's why I tend to have, like, cough drops or something like that, because it helps soothe it. But a lot of people won't know that, or they don't understand that, so,
Sometimes I worry that I'm not passing well enough. Like earlier on in my transition, especially when I wasn't very far along on testosterone, and my voice hadn't quite settled where it's at now, I had a harder time passing, and sometimes people would still assume that like I was a she her, I was a woman, and that was really hard for me because I'm not one to feel comfortable correcting people. I try to avoid conflict whenever possible, and so I'd rather just, like, do what I can to get out of that situation than, try to bring up a whole big political topic that people might not be very friendly about, and so that was really tough for me to be like, "Okay, like, I feel that I'm this way, but other people don't see it. Like, does that mean that I'm feeling something wrong? Like, am I the one that's wrong if, these other people don't agree with what I'm feeling?" And so, when I was in that less secure, that more insecure place, I try to cope with it by doing things like dressing a certain way, and especially like, too, someone once commented to me like, "Oh, like you pass really well, except for this like yellow backpack that you carry around, kind of like a purse." And so, like, I like took that to heart and was like, "Oh my goodness, like like I have to stop carrying around so much stuff, and I have to look more manly by like trying to stuff everything into my pockets." Um, and so that for me was, one of those things where it's like, oh, I don't feel very secure about being a man. And so I'm, going to try to conform to these like standards, these expectations of being a man. But as, I've gotten more used to being a man, gotten more confident in being a man, um, it's been a lot more fun to be like, I don't care about what other people think. They can think what they want, but like there are times that I wish that I passed a little bit better, for safety, for sure. And there are times that I will like purposefully accentuate more masculine sides of myself. But then there's other times that I'm like, I'll be as feminine as I want. I enjoy being a more effeminate man. I enjoy being a more gay man. I enjoy being a little bit more flamboyant about some things, and, like, that's who I am, and I'm actually secure in that,
Yeah.
which is a crazy thing for me to be saying, 'cause that kinda confidence was never a thing before transitioning for me.
Going through this transition, um, I I can't help notice there a lot of men aren't um they're not uh letting themselves be feminine is what they say, or they're just mainly like, I have to be a man, I have to, like, I don't talk about my feelings. But I feel like there is a shift and change of society where men are finally um being able to speak on how are they feeling. They're allowed to have emotions, they're allowed to be vulnerable, speak to a therapist, and that type of stuff. And I think that's really important to show. And I think being trans, I I didn't really want to. I always wanted to be a cis male, and um, I think this was a better feeling for me, or I feel like I can accept being trans because I can understand both sides of the gender. Um, being Having feminine characteristics and masculine characteristics, you're allowed to have both. Like, you don't need to have one or the other, and just having that. And this kind of goes into like politics right now because of the toxic masculinity happening with who they're supporting, especially with women not having abortions or being empathetic about different diversities, inclusion. Yeah, and I feel like men need to stand up for as allies for women. With the political climate today, um, how have you how have you been? I mean, like,
I was feeling so, so, so afraid, at the
mhm,
beginning of the year, to, like, tune into the, like, inauguration speech and having, like, one of the first, like, policies being, like, erasing trans people was
mm,
it was new levels of fear that I hadn't experienced before, and I thought that, pre-transition was, like, the scariest things had been for me, when I was so afraid of everyone rejecting me when they found out my
mhm,
secret, right? That I'm trans. And then now here's this new fear of, okay, now I know I'm trans. Now I actually have my family supporting me being trans, but now the government, is not going to support that and is very publicly, very openly, very aggressively going to try to basically detransition us, right? Take away our healthcare, take away our legal standing,
mhm,
um, make the public afraid of us and hate us. So I'm watching my favorite political commentary streamer on Twitch. So I'm watching it after the fact on YouTube, the recording of the stream. And it's Trump's inauguration speech. So I'm watching it after the fact. And right off the bat, Trump is saying, there are only two genders, male and female. Um, and between the lines, what he's saying is being trans, being non-binary, being intersex, that doesn't exist. There's these two categories that are assigned from birth, and there is no changing that. Where you started out. So I was like shocked. I was like, wow. I was like, that's crazy that that's one of his priorities in his presidency is saying that right off the bat. Um, but I didn't register how I was feeling about it until I was watching the comments from that stream, um, being incredibly supportive. So it was like hearts with the trans flag, and someone saying, I remember it was like in all caps, like, we will protect you, we will defend you, we will stand with you. And right now I'm having the same reaction to that. It's like I like started crying at that, not at what Trump was saying, but that at there were other people who weren't trans who were willing to stand with us and were also horrified by what was going on, and but also willing to take action against it. Um, and that's when I realized how afraid I was, when I felt safe enough to be afraid because there were people that would protect me. Um, and that's very much been something that it's been following me around a lot. This year has been that sense of fear of like we're next. We're the next ones after the migrants that they want to come after. And they've made that pretty clear with a lot of their policies. And so it's been something that I've been learning how to navigate because I thought that, after I came out and transitioned medically, legally at work, socially, that, I a lot of the scary days are behind me. But then it was discovering there are these new scary days, of, now that I'm more visible, um, what kind of a danger that could bring. Um, and so how I've been trying to handle coping with it is, um, remembering the the strength of the people who have come before me. What actually helped was realizing that, um, this kind of experience wasn't new to my family. My grandmothers, having been in the incarceration camps, had to experience something similar. Granted, their like the threat to their physical safety was, much worse than mine right now. Um, but they also went through this political cycle of people seeing them as an enemy when they had done nothing wrong,
Mhm.
and seeing them as, um, foreign enemies when they were very much so American. And so it was realizing like, oh, this is something that they survived. Um, was a sad thing to realize that like we're repeating history in so many ways, but also did give me the strength of like, okay, my family has been through this, and I can survive this too. It's just to take it one step at a time, kind of a thing. What about you? How has this landscape, this climate that we're in, how has it affected your family?
Just like I guess for you, I mean, you're very much into politics, and my dad was religiously following politics, and he's the one who really tells me everything that's going on. Because I'm not really into politics, but obviously, being trans, it kind of forces you to know what's up to date and happening. But I think when it happened, the presidential election happened, and my dad was just like, "You're gonna be okay," and he was worried about me, like if I was moving elsewhere. He's like, "Oh, I'm glad you're like at least home right now," but he kind of already expected these things to happen. He was very like predictive about it, but I think it was nice, but it wasn't like, "Are you okay?" He never said, "Are you doing okay?" And that's just like my dad, though. He's not the type of person to like ask these questions. He just is like, he knows he's there to help support you, like pick you up, basically. But my mom, she never said anything. It's definitely hard for me to talk about, but I know I I don't I know she did try her best for what, you know, what is given to her, from her circumstances. But, she can definitely go ahead and research things. She can join different groups. Like there's ways to help participate or to initiate the steps of like understanding maybe being trans or talk to other transparent parents who have trans kids. So I think that's my difficulty with my relationship with my mom is not her going out of the way trying, I guess. She does question, all the is this the right choice for me? Are you sure about it? After 7 years though of transitioning, I think it was hard because she doesn't go deeper in the conversations that I have with her, and I don't have that many conversations with her. It's very surface level. So I removed myself out of that environment, um, because my parents are divorced. So I was living with my mom since high school, and once I graduated high school, I just left and moved with my dad just to be out of that type of environment because I knew that was going to be better for me. My sister is supportive, and I know she means well, but um, not being trans and stuff, it was kind of, well, I guess being trans at first, the the transition was hard for her. I think just getting my pronouns, um, and it kind of sucks because it's like a lot of people who you may know for like a short period of time can easily correct themselves on pronouns or your name, but sometimes my sister does it. It feels like intentionally that she uses like my old name Taylor, or um I remember one time we were on a trip and she used she her in front of like a someone who was like a cashier, another person, and I was like, the person was like, "You mean he?" So the other person actually said he, and then she was like, "Yeah, whatever." And then I was like, "Okay." So I think it kind of just made me feel uncomfortable about the situation, but um, I know at the end of the day she means well. Um, that's why I think it's really important to have a chosen family. So like Okaidi, it really came to me at the right time when I needed it the most, even though I wasn't really. I had these feelings of a loss of community. I think that's what I had an issue with. Having that support, and people who understand what I'm going through, and I was really happy um, when I went to, at the time it was Queer Oban, and I don't know, just being around Japanese American, LGBT, both like slices of me, just celebrating and supporting each other, having that kindness, really gave me hope for that community, sense of community. Um, and that just made me want to continue being part of Okaidi. It was so nice talking to you and learning about your journey.
Same, same. It is very uncanny meeting someone who's, like, had so many of the similar, like, experiences as me.
And I feel like we have like a brotherhood, if you said.
Yeah. What I hope people take away from this interview is that if I can do this, if I can realize that I'm trans and come out pretty publicly at work, and come out to a very conservative religious family, and be okay, that other people can go through similar things and be okay. It won't be perfect, but you will find that you're a lot stronger and braver than you realize.
I want to give hope for the next generation. I think it's really important to have this voice, and I'm so grateful for Okaidi letting us have this space to talk about um, our experiences. And long as we have platforms and resources still, and chosen family support, we are going to get through the next 4 years together. We're not going to go away because trans people have always existed.